The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 928. Coming to you on Monday, the 4th of March, 2019. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic policy choices. And you would be relieved to hear that there would just be one preliminary comment, well, two very short ones, namely, and as usual, my condolences go out to families which have suffered recent bereavements. And secondly, just to remind all spiritual Baptists of the Spiritual Baptist Archdiocese of the enthronement ceremony for the new Archbishop, which will be held on Sunday the 17th of March at St. Elizabeth Cathedral at Belmont. Now to the topic. As promised in last week's program, I will make a bit of a departure on tonight's program by speaking directly on matters of policy, even though they are also matters of law, in that their implementation would involve legislative changes. But there are two fundamental matters of policy which have been, the policies which have been announced by the government and the opposition, with which I am in profound disagreement. Of course, ever since the constitutional referendum exercise, I have differed from my party, the New Democratic Party, in my view of constitutional reform and its necessity. The party didn't want to go through with what they had undertaken initially and change their minds and stop supporting constitutional reform. So my opposition to my party on those matters is well known. But in the last 2 years, they have announced a policy change with which I am in, as I said before, in profound disagreement. And that has to do with their announced intention of switching the allegiance of St. Vincent and the Grenadines from Taiwan to mainland China. I'll use the colloquial terms because, as we know, the proper terms for mainland China is the People's Republic of China, and the proper term for Taiwan, according to the Taiwanese protocol, is the Republic of China on Taiwan. So I will just say Taiwan and mainland China. Now, the main reason why I disagree with the NDP's change of policy is simply this. The NDP started life as a profoundly democratic parliament, a democratic party in parliament, the New Democratic Party. And after years of recognizing a democratic Taiwan, the party has announced its intention to break that off and to support an undemocratic mainland China. That is the first anomaly clearly, those who know a smattering of the history of Taiwan would know that Taiwan was formed and came about by the defeat of General Chiang Kai-shek and his moving with himself and his supporters to Taiwan to establish their political kingdom there. And from the time it has been established, Taiwan has pursued democratic models. It holds elections. Its president is elected from time to time. It has an elected assembly, albeit a bit fractious, because I recall on one of my 2 official visits to Taiwan, there was an occasion in which actual physical fighting broke out in the Taiwanese parliament. But Taiwan has been a beacon of democracy, not perfect by any means, but a beacon of democratic practices in that part of the world. And to tell me that when we look at the history of Taiwan's contribution to the development of St. Vincent and Grenadines, to tell me that all of a sudden we want to switch from supporting Taiwan to go and support undemocratic mainland China is really to tell me something that I simply cannot stomach. See, I speak as one whom I visited Taiwan on two occasions during my term as Attorney General and saw the way of life there myself. We have many, many students in Taiwan, and one of the first Vincentian students who went to Taiwan and is still there is Mrs. Peggy Carr. She used to be an information officer in the Government Information Service, a person with whom I was very close. We had a correspondence at one time, but I have not been in touch with her recently. But I happen to know how much she thinks of Taiwan and its ambitions. And recently, as I mentioned last week in another context, I have a cousin, a young lady from Barley, who used to be a student in Venezuela, graduated, and is now on a scholarship to Taiwan, and through whom I keep in touch with Taiwanese affairs. So that I come not just with the theoretical knowledge of Taiwan, but a real appreciation for the people of that country. Now, the People's Republic of China has made enormous strides internationally, militarily, economically. Yes, but those strides have been at the expense of a particular kind of government. China is by no means a democratic country. And those of us who could remember the brutal mowing down of students in Tiananmen Square when they rose up in protest some years ago would be left in no doubt as to the kind of political system which China has. Now, most countries in the world, and particularly at the United Nations, recognize the People's Republic of China. I am not gainsaying that. And in the Caribbean, most Caribbean countries recognize the People's Republic of China. I know that. I also know how come some of them came to recognize China, but that's another story. Taiwan has very few friends internationally. But among its friends and most sturdy ally in the Caribbean has been St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And it was due to the foresight of the late Robert Milton Cato who established relations with Taiwan. We are one of the few friends Taiwan has in the world, and only one of 2 or 3 in the Caribbean. But Taiwan has not shown any imperialistic ambitions upon St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They have assisted us in tangible ways with our development. And every time there is occasion to bring the subject up, particularly when they have their 10-10 celebration, that is the 10th day of the 10th month, and there are addresses by the Taiwanese representatives and addresses by the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a list of projects which Taiwan has financed either wholly or in part in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is normally read out. Now, we in St. Vincent and the Grenadines have never had any quarrel with Taiwan over any matter as far as I know. So it's not to say that Taiwan did something which caused us to have to rethink our relationship and cause us to threaten to break off diplomatic relations with them. The people have done us nothing. And if we are going to develop a reputation of a country which abandons its friends for no reason, then to me, it speaks of an ungrateful mentality. And goes against all that has been said by both government and opposition in St. Vincent and the Grenadines over the years about the special relationship between SVG and Taiwan. So that when the opposition came out with the announcement that if they win the next elections, they are going to switch from Taiwan to Communist China, mainland China, the People's Republic of China, I was astonished and very disappointed. I say, is that the way St. Vincent and the Grenadines is going to treat a dependable, reliable friend and ally, which cherishes the support it gets from St. Vincent and Grenadines, particularly at the United Nations? We're one of the few countries who stand up and vote for Taiwan at the UN. Taiwan has been expelled from this body, from that body, from the other body. We have always expressed our support. So that I disagree most vehemently with my party in its public announcement that it is going to switch its diplomatic allegiance from Taiwan to China. It is not too late for them to have a change of mind, and I do hope that in the next coming months or years, that the New Democratic Party would rethink its announced decision and reconsider what it has announced in relation to dropping Taiwan like a hot potato, board up, and going to support mainland China just because mainland China is strong. So that is my area of disagreement with one of the stated policies of the New Democratic Party. And before I leave the topic entirely, let me say this. I have noted comments published in Eyewitness News, commentary, not the main news reports, by persons who have been criticizing Sir James for statements he has made recently, particularly statements he made concerning the election petitions, where he is giving the party gratuitous advice, and he has said that whenever the judge who has heard the election petitions makes and announces his decision, whether the party, and if the party does not prevail, Sir James has advised the party to treat the matter as a political matter rather than a legal matter. And some people want to eat his head off for saying that. Well, let me say this. Sir James has political insights, the likes of which have not even been touched by anybody in the current leadership of the New Democratic Party. I can speak that way because I was at his right hand as chairman of the party from 1996, when I was elected chairman at the convention in Beckway, to about 2001, when I was unceremoniously removed as chairman. Officially, I did not offer myself for election at the last convention I attended, but that was just official. There had been a well-oiled plan to get rid of me, and I would have been removed if I didn't announce my departure. So for that span of time, I worked with Sir James as his number two, both politically and in government for a time. And I can tell you, Sir James's intellect is not to be slighted, particularly when it comes to matters of political strategy. He's still a boss, and his mind is still intact. And even with him not being at the leadership, I would strongly urge any young leader in the New Democratic Party to pay attention to what Sir James says. Don't brush it off and say this and that and so on. And funnily enough, even though I've had my issues with Sir James, we don't see eye to eye on a few matters. The last being the attitude of both of us towards the CCJ. Sir James is a firm Privy Council man, and as you know, I am a firm CCJ man, so we differ profoundly on that. But when it comes to matters of politics and political acumen, political strategizing, I've always seen eye to eye with Sir James. And I would caution against anybody in the leadership of NDP downplaying anything that Sir James has to say publicly. His brains are still as sharp as ever. And in the comments he made about the matter should be approached from a political standpoint if the party loses, are comments with which I am in wholehearted agreement with Sir James. Now to the government. There has been a controversy for the last few years on the question of, let me use the colloquial term, the sale of passports, citizenship by investment program. Let me say loudly and clearly that I support the notion of the citizenship investment program. I do not agree with the government and its rationale for being opposed to that program. After all, St. Vincent has been in the business of selling our flags to fly on ships for a long time. In the Caribbean, we are by far the biggest seller of flags of convenience and have been for quite a long time. The registration of ships under the St. Vincent flag started way back, I believe, in the 1970s, when we, with Mr. Dabinovich, established a shipping registry in Geneva. And as far as I'm concerned, there is not much difference between the selling of flags of convenience and the selling of passports. Now, the citizenship by investment program has to be very carefully arranged. Otherwise, the program can lend itself to abuse. But looking around at the various Caribbean territories, particularly those in the OECS, which have adopted that program, even though there have been abuses here and there, because you cannot make any man-made institution foolproof entirely, I would say the way that the system has operated in the places that have it has not got beyond control or beyond expectations of what is to be desired. And once the safeguards are adequate and they're put into place to cut down, if not eliminate, fraud, money laundering, trafficking in the proceeds of drugs and so on. I see no rational reason, no rational basis for any OECS government who is not yet participating in that project to do so. It may well be too late for St. Vincent and the Grenadines to reap the sort of benefits which other OECS territories have reaped. But if we went into that program and we realized just a third of the benefits financially which other OECS countries have realized from their program, it would be worthwhile. Government of St. Vincent and Grenadines has made a reasonably good effort at managing our finances. That must not be gainsaid. And it is impressive to me that throughout all the life of the existing administration, they have not had to send home civil servants in droves or at all for monetary reasons. And I can't recall ever hearing that civil servants couldn't get paid when the month was finished. I know there are some persons with claims who had to wait a few days and so on, but by and large, the government has done very well as far as crafting and managing budgets are concerned. But the government would do even better if it had the financial cushion of millions of dollars flowing from a citizenship by investment program to assist in its developmental efforts. I hope the government has not closed its doors completely on the idea. I hope they would still discuss and debate it, because to keep St. Vincent and the Grenadines artificially from a source of funding from which other countries are benefiting enormously doesn't make sense to me. So that I hope the government would change that policy. So in sum, I hope the opposition would change its policy, its announced policy of intending to break away from Taiwan and to support mainland China, as it has announced. And I hope the government would rethink its opposition to the citizenship by investment program. I just thought I would give out these matters of my personal opinion as I told you the last time. But normally I try to stay away from matters in political controversy. But I can't entirely. And you would understand why PR is PR. Okay? All right. Well, that is all from this program of the Law and You, program number 928. I look forward to being of further service to you next week, Monday, DV, for another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. Do have a pleasant week, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.